Dramas that can't be ignored. Stories others refuse to notice. Faces changing the world right now. A full picture of today's news. Live, on demand, from around the globe. Ruptly.tv.
Hello again. A deadly shooting at a church in the U.S. state of South Carolina has killed 9 people. The mayor of the city of Charleston has described it as a, quote, most unspeakable and heartbreaking tragedy. Police say the shooting is a race hate crime. The gunman's believed to be a white man in his 20s and is still at large. It happened during evening prayers at Charleston's Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. It's one of the oldest in the United States and has one of the largest black congregations in the South. The U.S. Defense Secretary has admitted that Washington is struggling to recruit enough local fighters in Syria to battle Islamic State. In response to a question, Ashton Carter said very few of them could actually be trusted.
We're trying to recruit and identify people that, as you put it, can be counted on to have the right mindset and ideology, not be aligned with groups like ISIL. It turns out to be very hard to identify people who meet both of those criteria.
Well, American support for the Syrian rebels goes back a long way, so Carter's admission comes as something of a surprise. Guinea Chichikan has more on that.
What Ashton Carter said is striking, considering all this time, for many months now, U.S. officials have been saying that there are these vetted, moderate Syrian fighters who can go after ISIS, and while they're at it, go after the Assad government as well. President Obama sounded so certain about this when asking for funding.
We have spent a lot of time trying to work with a moderate opposition in Syria.
Across the border in Syria, we have ramped up our military assistance to the Syrian opposition. Tonight, I call on Congress again to give us additional authorities and resources to train and equip these fighters.
Well, President Obama got the resources and everything he wanted. Now it turns out U.S. military officials are not at all certain that they're going to be able to make sure that they're not training extremists, that the weapons and equipment that the U.S. gives these rebels will not go to ISIS eventually. It is only now that we hear this from U.S. officials, although warning signs were all over. In 2013, the former U.S. ambassador to Syria took a picture with the Free Syrian Army colonel, who later went on television to say this about his relations with ISIS.
My relationship with the brothers in ISIL is good. I communicate almost daily with my brothers in ISIL to settle disputes.
Some members of Congress, too, thought they knew enough about Syrian rebels. The Syrian fighters whom John McCain so eagerly posed with were later identified as criminals who kidnapped innocent people. Nevertheless, throughout these 2 years, Washington claimed they were building a wonderful relationship with the Syrian rebels. When asked if it was worth continuing with the policy of training and equipping Syrian rebels, given the inability so far to identify suitable partners, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, replied, "It is too soon to give up on it."
Well, while Washington struggles for recruits in Syria, Islamic State continues its barbaric onslaught right across the region. That was one of the subjects of the latest In the Now show on RT.
Rape, slavery, sadism, and murder. ISIS-style sexual jihad is not voluntary. The UN revealed what ISIS does to women when it gains control over new territories. After seizing villages, ISIS terrorists separate women from men. All men over 14 are executed. Then women are separated from young girls who are more valuable. The girls are stripped naked and examined to test their virginity. The prettiest virgins are priced higher. Others, well, they can be sold for as little as $13. The women can be passed around from 20 to 30, up to as many as 100 men. One woman who escaped ISIS reported being married and divorced 22 times over a weekend.
It's not something that is acceptable Islamically, and I don't think humanity-wise we can consider this as, well, it happens anyway, so what's the big deal? It always is a big deal. When it comes to women being objectified and exploited for political, social, or any other gain, it is wrong.
No longer just a face in the crowd. British police have sparked a row by using facial recognition technology to scan some 90,000 people who attended a music festival last weekend. Well, police say it was all in the name of security. The aim was to identify potential troublemakers by comparing faces to a Europe-wide database of known offenders. Officers would have otherwise sought out suspects the old-fashioned way with their own eyes. Police insist the captured data was neither stored or used for anything else. But the experiment has set a precedent, and it's thought it could soon become the norm in the UK. Several other music festival organisers now want to get their hands on the hardware, something liberty activists are decrying as an invasion of privacy.
People attending a music festival shouldn't find themselves in a police lineup. This is a shocking and alarming development and a further move away from reactive policing, where the police start with a crime and then look for suspects to investigate and solve that crime, and a further move towards what they call predictive policing, where they start with pieces of data, which could be a face print, a fingerprint, and a car number plate, an IP address, a telephone number, and then start looking for crimes. Facial recognition technology is what they want to really go with. They want to run with that technology, and they're using things like music festivals as a testing ground, but also to get the public used to the idea that it's okay. But we mustn't let this be normalised. This is not normal, and this is not the mark of a free society.
As you might imagine, the online reaction's been swift and sharp. Some comments criticised the police for using a private organisation to host its snooping experiment, with one person suggesting there could be legal loopholes. Although some people are defending the technology, saying officers tend to keep a low profile and only take action in order to prevent crimes. Britain is hosting international celebrations to mark 200 years since Napoleon's defeat at the Battle of Waterloo. But perhaps unsurprisingly, French politicians have apparently decided to snub the event. The historic rivalry between the former empires may be a distant memory, but London and Paris still have some major sticking points between them, as Polly Boyko reports.
British and European dignitaries, as well as battle enthusiasts, are gathering at Waterloo over the next 2 days to mark the battle that Britain and its allies won and France lost. And that makes things, well, a little bit awkward. So much so that the French government isn't sending anyone more high-ranking than their ambassador from down the road in Brussels.
No French leader wants to stand there while everyone tells the story of how a French champion was beaten and chased off the battlefield. You know, they just can't stand it. But I'm sure that the British, representative will be loving it.
The UK's official memorial group for Waterloo has politely clarified that the events will be commemorations, not celebrations. But British politicians were less polite when France was rattled by Belgium's plans to issue a €2 Waterloo coin to be circulated across the Eurozone. Paris objected that this would cause a, quote, unfavourable reaction in France, prompting one UK MEP to respond by saying that the French should, quote, grow up, and that their hurt feelings shouldn't stand in the way of the anniversary of Waterloo. And it's here at London's Waterloo station that a new memorial has been unveiled. The battle ended over 2 decades of war between Britain and France, but like all neighbours, there are still some things that the Brits and the French just don't see eye to eye on. Britain's Conservative government wants to change the terms of its EU membership, but France's foreign minister has already said Paris would veto this.
There's a long history of France being the enemy, and it is an area of contest because the European Union is trying to create the idea that there's this long period of European history and that really the whole end of history was to lead to a European superstate. So this area of conflict does actually have some political relevance even today.
While over in London City, there's a Waterloo Round 2. It recently emerged that the descendants of both Napoleon and his arch-nemesis, the Duke of Wellington, both work for rival private equity firms. But when it comes to the battle that took place all those years ago, in France at least, there are plenty of excuses for why Napoleon lost to the Duke of Wellington. Victor Hugo blamed it on the heavens, while many French historians have pointed out that the great military commander was suffering from hemorrhoids.
I go onto these TV and radio programs here in France talking about Napoleon's hemorrhoids, and the cures he used, like bathing his backside. I quote in my book about how his backside was bathed with warm towels by his surgeon. Apparently he also had leeches attached to his hemorrhoids, And the funny thing is, you've got this great French emperor just about to embark on this huge battle, and very serious French historians are just concentrated on his backside.
Polly Boyko, RT, London.
A series of car bombings in Yemen's capital have killed at least 4 people and injured many more. The explosions targeted the political headquarters of the Shia Houthi rebel group and several mosques. Islamic State say they carried out the attack. A major international drugs ring has been broken by Italian police. 4 tons of cocaine with a street value of around €1 billion was seized in a series of raids over the past number of months. The drugs were smuggled from Colombia. Officials say 32 mafia members have been arrested. Next, Max Kaiser takes on the reasons behind Britain's stagnant economy.